Hello, and thank you for joining us on Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Matthew Dowling, serving the 51st Legislative District in Fayette and Somerset County. Today, our episode of Legislative Report is being shot and brought to you here from the Inn at Watson's Choice, a beautiful historic inn in the 51st Legislative District. And joining me are two people who have a lot to do with the inn here. Our innkeeper and owner, Mrs. Nancy Ross, as well as Marianne Scavarla, who does their marketing and helps with some of the events. I want to talk a little bit about the history of the building because before we were on camera, we talked about how far back this building really goes. But before that, I learned an interesting fact, the fact that you were born right here on property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you had said that your parents were renting the facilities at the time.
Renting the house from the Sapper family that owned the entire property, yes.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the age of the structure. You said it was built in
1800.
Okay.
It went on at the courthouse. It went on the record in 1800. When we first bought the property in 1979, there was an outbuilding that we think was the original John Watson home. It was clapboard siding, 2-story, very primitive. It had a rubble fireplace in it, 1 story, 1 room down where they probably had their meals, and then upstairs was a sleeping area.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it would have been a money pit to save it. So we tore it down, and we are now sitting right in the area where it was located.
And you said the original land grant goes back even further than the property records.
Right, 1769 was the original land grant to John Watson. Back then, that's how they rewarded the soldiers, 325 acres. And he also had a brother that had an adjoining farm. John Watson named it Watson's Choice because of the lay of the land, and his brother named his land grant Georgia after his wife.
Okay.
And they both had 325 acres, as I said.
Okay.
We have 45 of the original.
Okay, so you have 45 acres, and on the property you have how many different buildings?
When we bought the property, we had 14 outbuildings, 2 homes, and 45 acres of jungle.
And you've done quite significant restoration, I guess maybe we should call it, and renovation as well.
Correct.
Why don't you talk to us a little bit about what shape the building was in when you purchased it, and what year was that when you purchased?
1979, when we bought the entire property.
Okay.
The original thought was this was supposed to be our personal home, my husband Bill and I. And the lady from whom we bought the property lived next door. So that home was built in 1900 by her grandfather. 6 months after we bought everything from Helen, she passes away. So here we are. We're left with 2 homes. Neither were really inhabitable or up to code. The 14 outbuildings and, as I said, 45 acres of total jungle. She was a recluse, didn't cut anything down, didn't throw anything away. So here we are with it.
And how many years did it take for restoration?
Well,
or to get you to the point to where you are here?
Actually, it took us 10 years to do our home.
Okay.
Because we lived in Point Marion in an apartment, and we would work on the weekends. We got it to where it was habitable with running water, electricity, everything up to code. This home here, we tore the back section off and boarded everything up. And it sat until we started 5 years prior to opening, which was 1997. So in 1991-92, we started working on this, and we were living next door by that time. And we felt that Fayette County probably could use, at that time, bed and breakfast. And we're different because we have a separate entity from our own home. Usually bed and breakfasts have a couple rooms within the private home. Not here. We have 7 guest rooms.
Now let's talk a little bit about the guest rooms you have, because they're unique in that they have a private bath.
Yes, private bath in each room. Each room has a name to it and not a number. For example, the flower garden, and that's how the room is decorated. We have the John Watson room that is right next to the flower garden, and it's named after for the owner, and it's done in country primitives. And each room is like a child. It has its own personality.
So what made you, I know you said you identified a need in Fayette County, the fact that you felt that they needed a bed and breakfast. And at the time, there weren't nearly the number of hotel options even, so I'm sure that, you know, they needed someplace to stay. But what made you want to be a innkeeper? Because I know the lifestyle of an innkeeper, while you have guests and residents, is a little bit different than a normal person's life.
It's 24/7. You have to be on call for your guests. And at the time, Bill and I knew exactly what we were getting into. It's just like raising a family. You have to be there all the time if you want it to be done well and done the right way.
So you're up every morning preparing breakfast for the guests?
Up at 5:30 every morning.
And what type of breakfast do you serve?
Full country breakfast. You get juice, fresh fruit, either an egg dish or a syrup dish, and then I bake all the pastries.
Okay. So, Marianne, I know we haven't asked you a whole lot. You've been pretty quiet so far, but you've been able to help to market the inn a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your marketing efforts and really maybe why people want to come to Fayette County for tourism opportunities.
Well, marketing at the inn has been a great delight, first and foremost, because it's so unique in so many different ways. And it's lovingly restored and kept, so it's so easy to market that. But Fayette County, as Nancy alluded to a little earlier, has a need for places like this because Fayette County, I think, is one of Pennsylvania's probably best kept secret outside of people coming here as a destination because they know that Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water is located in Pennsylvania. So this part of Pennsylvania will draw that crowd. And of course, we know that Falling Water draws people from all over the world. It is truly an international draw. And so along with that, when you consider that you have that in and of itself, and then you look at the rich history that Fayette County is so fortunate and blessed with George Washington at the age of 22 years old during the French and Indian War. And really, that's a war that really sparked the first World War that was even quoted by Winston Churchill, you know, and you bring in George Marshall, this phenomenal man who's born in Uniontown, Fayette County. And then you look at our natural resources, and they are just incredible with the whitewater rafting, the beauty of the mountains. You know, you start to ascend up the summit any season of the year. It can be foggy and rainy, and it's still a beautiful experience. So everywhere you look around Fayette County, you have this great beauty, but you have this amazing history, along with the National Road, the first main highway that crosses the whole United States, is amazing. And then you have people like Albert Gallatin, the Secretary of State with Thomas Jefferson, who has an estate here. And so, you know, these are just some of the things that we tap into and look at, but unfortunate for Fayette County is the residents themselves take it for granted, and we know we don't own that. That's very typical of anybody that lives in a beautiful area. But I think it's really important that we really, as people who live and work in Fayette County, start to appreciate our resources. Mm-hmm. If we're having people from all over the whole entire world come to see Falling Water, and along with that now Kentuck Knob, you look at that, and then you have people traveling all over from the United States because they can whitewater raft in Ohio Powell. And then, of course, you have historians who come to see Fort Necessity because that is where the French and Indian War actually began. And to consider that a young 22-year-old George Washington contemplated crossing the Youghiogheny River in Ohio Powell, knowing he couldn't do that and had to go south. And then, of course, that ties into Pittsburgh. And then you look at that aspect of it as well, that we're only 60 miles from Pittsburgh, which is another cultural, wonderful place, beautiful city. So we just have so many opportunity to host such a diverse group of people from all over the world, and that is truly not exaggerated. You can look at that in the numbers of the visitors who come through this area. And I believe that it was 3 years ago that I heard the last number of Ohio Pile State Park having over 1.5 million visitors. So
Per year.
Per year, thank you, yes. So that's a lot to get excited about. When you take it another step further and you look at a place like Falling Water and Kentuck Knob, and those places were built by the hands of local artisans of Fayette County.
Right.
That is so exciting when you think about that, because you have the most famous house in the world, and it was built by the hands of people that were born and raised in this beautiful county. And then when you look at even the Industrial Revolution, and there again, there's a whole nother layer that so many people don't tap into. In the late 1800s, we had more millionaires per capita in the city of Uniontown because of the coal and the coke industry, which fueled the Industrial Revolution for the whole United States. You have churches in Uniontown that boast Tiffany glass windows. So, there's so many layers, and the thing that is so exciting, it can reach the youngest to the oldest, and the diversity of everything that we have to offer. And it would be really wonderful to see people in Fayette County become excited about it. I had somebody say to me when my kids were playing Little League, and they said they couldn't wait for their kids to grow up and move out of Fayette County. And I said, why? Why? I mean, look what we have here. So that sort of was the first time that it really occurred to me what we had, because I began to defend it, not even realizing I was defending it. So,
Yeah.
marketing Fayette County it's just so natural, because it's so easy, because it's so truthful. It's so full of truth and vitality, and you don't have to add all kinds of cliches to get people here. You simply tell them the truth about Fayette County, and it'll bring them here.
You make some great points, and interestingly enough, you mentioned that people at the Little League games were talking about their family moving out of the area. I remember being in high school and being frustrated with people that I went to school with that said, when I graduate, I'm going to leave Uniontown and Fayette County. And here a dozen and a half years later, some of them have, and some of them have returned and realized the gem that we have with the low cost of living, but also with the central location that Fayette County, Pennsylvania offers. And so I guess maybe a question that I would ask you is, sitting around the tables in your breakfast room in the morning, where are some of the places that people are taking their day trips? Because I know we're within driving distance of even Washington, D.C. I went down and back in the same day a month or so ago. I drive to and from Harrisburg on a regular basis. So, and Pittsburgh's a stone's throw away. So we're really within a short driving distance for a lot of different sites. In the morning, where are people talking that they're going to go out and visit during the day, and how far away is that before they come back
Well,
home?
the first thing is Falling Water, Kentuck Knob, Ohio Pile. They want to go hiking or biking. The problem is when they come for maybe just one day, it seems like they're on a treadmill. They want to get everything done within that day, okay? But they forget that there's so many things to do around here, so we'll see them maybe the next year for 2 nights or 3 nights or 4 nights. They'll come back and want to see. They can go to Ligonier, which has a beautiful fort that has now been restored, which was part of the French and Indian War, and that's only an hour's drive from here. And then they'll go to Pittsburgh to see the museums. Andy Warhol, we get a lot of asking about him. And then the Carnegie Museums. They want to see that.
The mattress factory.
Right. The Strip District, to hear about it. And even Peachins, believe it or not. Peachins has made the map. They'll call from the state of California and want to know on our website. We see that Peachins is located near you.
And unfortunately, our historic Peachins location
Was
is
had
is
burned
burnt down and is
Right.
no longer there.
Right.
You know, it's funny. Funny you mentioned something like that, but I know the New York Times at one point in time did an article on Peachins, and it becomes a piece of another piece that is great for our area, but that piece of rustic Americana, the fact that we have that rust belt, we still have coke ovens, we still
Yes, we
have,
do.
you know, we have some operating coal mines. I wish we had more than we do, but we have remnants of the mines, we have remnants of the mills within the Pittsburgh area. So I think there is, beyond the architectural wonders that we have in this area, beyond the natural resources, but simply the fact that the Pittsburgh region, that steel belt, has become a piece of classic Americana that I know, you know, I didn't live in that era. My kids definitely didn't. But in 20 to 30 years, I can see people wanting to travel to learn the history of a steel mill, because it's something that just is not ingrained in our culture like maybe it was a generation ago. You know, I had grandparents and a great uncle that worked in the mills. But some of those remnants are still left in this area.
There is a mine that's intact called Shoaf, and it's in this area, and we've had people that actually wanted to see it. The patch houses that they used to call them, the mine tipple, all the equipment is still there, the coke ovens, and we even had a gentleman that came, I think, from the state of Washington, and he wanted to see the coke oven, so my husband went and took him for one afternoon. They went around the area to see the coke ovens and the plate that goes on top of the coke oven itself. He collects them, so I guess he was able to get a piece of
That's neat.
our local history.
And I understand there are some restored ovens that you can see out in the Connellsville area, in the Bullskin Township area as well. So again, other things that people can come and see. I know we want to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment. We'll talk a little bit more about the inn, a little bit more about tourism, and maybe some of the ways that the Commonwealth welcomes tourism, and maybe some of the ways that we can do a better job at doing that.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you know that on May 25, 1905, the Statue of Commonwealth was installed on top the Capitol Dome in Harrisburg? Simply called Commonwealth, the bronze cast statue weighs in at 4 tons and stands over 14 feet high. In 1904, Roland Hinton Perry was chosen to sculpt this artistic figure, which he referred to as the symbolic embodiment of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Capitol architect Joseph Houston designed this bronze masterpiece with her right arm extending to symbolize kindness and with her left arm holding a ribbon mace symbolizing justice. During her decades of overlooking the city of Harrisburg, Commonwealth has endured periods of harsh weather leading to her deterioration and need for restoration. Prior to her refurbishing in 1997, Commonwealth was last restored in the 1940s. Under the direction of Rathgeber Goss Associates, the Commonwealth statue has undergone restoration and regilding to the form originally envisioned by her sculptor. Since being replaced on top the Capitol Dome in 1998, Commonwealth now graces the State Capitol building. Now you know. Did you know that Act 16 of 1999 honors one of the greatest leaders in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives? The Matthew J. Ryan Legislative Office Building, once known as the Capitol Annex, is located next to the main Capitol building and honors the late Speaker of the House, Matthew J. Ryan. Those who visit this building will observe the magnificent architectural designs providing eloquence and grandeur to the building. Known as one of the greatest members in the history of the Pennsylvania State House, Matthew Ryan started his career in the legislature in 1963 and was elected Speaker in 1981. His charisma and knowledge will forever be reflected in the building now named after this great legislative leader. Now you know.
Well, thank you for staying with us. In our first half of the show here at the Inn at Watson's Choice, we got to talk a little bit about tourism in Fayette County and in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. One of the issues that kind of quickly became an issue for us last year over the summer in the General Assembly was the potential of an implementation of a 5% statewide hotel tax that would have been added upon the hotel taxes that you already collect. And for those of you who don't know this, there's a sales tax and then also a tax that the local county collects that's used to reinvest into marketing monies. But that 5% statewide tax was something that I fought pretty adamantly, knowing the importance of tourism in our area. And I just kind of wanted to quickly ask your opinion of what a tax like that might have done to your industry and to your inn and to your business here.
It would have hurt us tremendously because they would have gone to motels, less expensive than we are, and they wouldn't care. Sometimes the people will tell me, all I want is just a bed to sleep in. They didn't care about the surroundings or the look of the bed and breakfast. And they would forego the breakfast itself to a cinnamon roll or something like that. But it would hurt us, definitely.
Yeah, I was extremely worried about places that have a higher cost of room per night because it is a percentage tax. So I agree with you. People may look past a wonderful opportunity to stay in a facility like yours in favor of, to no offense to Holiday Inn Express, because they want to save every dollar and be able to add that money into their vacation itself. So, it's something that we fought adamantly for or against on behalf of your industry, and I just kind of wanted to see how you thought it would have impacted you. In addition to the overnight stays you have here, though, I know you have some unique opportunities. And before we run out of time today, I want to make sure that we get to talk about those. First, you have some partnerships. And in the first half of the show, we talked about all the different places that you can go and travel to while you're staying here at the Inn at Watson's Choice, about all of those hidden gems in Fayette County. And two of those are Frank Lloyd Wright properties, Falling Water and Kentuck Knob. And I understand you have some package deals and partnerships going on with those facilities.
Yes. First of all, with Falling Water, we're part of the educational program, which means a donation is given from the inn, and that goes to Falling Water, and that helps to promote education for students. And Bill and Nancy have been a part of that for several years now.
I would say about 5 years now.
And that is something that's really important because it just really ties in, again, education and partnering also with that donation to Falling Water. Also, we're delighted this year we are kicking off our first year of having fireside chats, and we will have a docent once a month through the season come and offer a talk. We're having several different topics so that the guest at the inn will have a really intimate additional talk about Frank Lloyd Wright and Falling Water.
Now, those talks are only open to the guests of the inn,
correct?
So that's an added amenity you have for staying here at the Inn at Watson's Choice.
Yes, and I expect it to be very nice. We'll have complimentary wine and hors d'oeuvres with it, and just sit around the fire. We have a wonderful open fire pit. It's an English stone wall fire pit outside. So on a summer evening, that should really prove to be a wonderful...
With wine and cheese. Complimentary.
So we're looking forward to that. And then with Kentuck Knob, we sell packages. So oftentimes it makes it very easy for the guests coming into Fayette County that they can just get in touch with Nancy and Bill at the inn. They'll set up their reservation for them, take care of all of that, and then that way the guests can come and enjoy, relax, and then from here go to Falling Water and Kentuck Knob, which oftentimes they do both.
We provide directions for them, and so they won't get lost. Because the GPS sometimes does not work up in the mountain. We tell them ahead of time, so they rely on our directions.
Sure. Now, in addition to just staying overnight or the wonderful packages that you have now with your fireside chats, You also have the ability to have some larger scale special events here on property. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your special events, or do you do weddings at all?
Yes, we do. In fact, Nancy and Bill have offered elopement packages since they've opened, and they have proven to be very successful. And so they had a pergola that they offered their guests to, they could get married there. And then they had this wonderful barn that they restored, and our barn can facilitate up to 150 guests. And it's a very nice facility for a wedding. Barn weddings today, of course, are the big trend. However, really you can have a very chic wedding in this barn because it has a well-established floor, restrooms, things that the typical barns don't have. Also, they have an opportunity in the stable that's been refurbished also that will hold up to 90 guests, and they can also have events there. So we do have weddings. We have destination weddings where guests will rent the whole entire facility, the inn. The Harvest House has 5 additional rooms so that there's 12 altogether. And the Harvest House rooms have the jacuzzi tubs and a little bit more of the modern amenities. But the integrity of the inn remains at the Harvest House as well, because Bill and Nancy lovingly took apart other buildings. The beams that you see above us came from another barn, those kind of things, to make sure that it really, the integrity of the architecture remains throughout the property.
Now, if you're having one of those special events, or if someone's going to have a destination wedding here, especially if they'd be from out of town, do you assist with any of the planning, helping to find local vendors, photographers, things like that?
Yes, we've actually established a list, and we also have a wedding coordinator who's wonderful. Her name is Daphne, and you can get her information off our website as well. But Daphne will work one-on-one with our couples from the day that they walk in. We have a select group of vendors, and we work with them, and it works seamlessly because everything's arranged and ready to go for our brides and grooms, along with the fact that it's a photographer's dream. And I'm only quoting what several of the photographers who came here said, because the 45 acres of property is landscaped and beautiful with different flowers and things like that.
So I know for my wedding, we had to go to a church, we had to go to someplace else for pictures. We had an hors d'oeuvre party for the bridal party, and then we ended up at the hall that we had the wedding. So we were carted around quite a lot. You can do all of that
Everything right here.
on those 45 acres. And
keep that in mind with your children.
I'm sure, yeah, when it gets time for Pierce and Preston to get married, hopefully you're still around. Although I think we have a few years before then. So,
Yes.
So if they want to contact you for either reservations or a special event or anything of that nature, just to learn more about the Inn at Watson's Choice, how is the best way for individuals to get a hold of you?
By going on our website. Everything that we offer is listed on our website. Daphne's information and all of our events, everything is always current. So that's the best way.
Well, I see we're getting the high sign here, so we're just about out of time for today. I want to thank you both for opening up the inn and inviting us in today. I want to thank all of you for joining us on this episode of Legislative Report. My name is State Representative Matthew Dowling. Have a great day.